Before returning to Hogwarts for his fourth year, Harry and his friends attend the Quidditch World Cup, where trouble arises when Death Eaters, or Voldemort supporters, attack. The Dark Mark is shown, and it's becoming more and more clear that he who must not be named may return. Then at Hogwarts, the Triwizard Tournament is hosted, where one champion each from three schools, Hogwarts, Beauxbatons, and Durmstrang, competes in three extremely dangerous trials for the Triwizard Cup. After the three champions were announced, one more name was shot from the Goblet of Fire, where the name was submitted. Underaged Harry Potter, now forced to compete in the tournament due to a binding contract once the champions are selected. This may be a very sudden start in my review for Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, the fourth film of the franchise, but I gotta address this as soon as I can. The book clearly dictated that Dumbledore's reaction to this was calm. Never did he rush to Harry, possibly shaking the poor kid, knocking over some trophies in the process. Harry, did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire? He's not supposed to say it like that! Dumbledore, as clearly established, is a calm-hearted, soft-spoken person, a trait that Richard Harris was able to display perfectly. I don't care that he didn't want to do it at first, he did it very well, and didn't act like he didn't want the role. Nobody can be bothered to tell Michael Gambon that this doesn't feel right! You feel me? Sorry about that, but I really needed to address what many other fans of the book have already addressed, and even made the moment in the film an internet meme. Shouldn't J.K. Rowling have spoken up and said, you know, this doesn't feel right? Okay, let's move on. Other than that small yet very out in the open difference, the story is mainly capable of sticking to the original source material. However, it leaves out some key elements from the book that helps the rest of the series, such as Hermione starting this organization called Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare, or SPEW, as response to the harsh treatment of house elves. We'll talk about why in the future, but all I can say is that it helps a certain romance, and its removal from the films pretty much lessens the relevance of the house elves. As a result, for the second task, it wasn't Dobby who gave the gillyweed to Harry. Instead, it was Neville Longbottom, who only really served as a comedic relief for a while. In fact, Neville giving it to Harry actually makes more sense. There were also certain scenes that were either cut short or simply removed. It mainly contributes to a decision made that because the book was almost twice as long as its predecessor, they wanted to put aside all the components in the novel which didn't have direct relation to Harry. It was the first film to not begin at Privet Drive, which makes sense. We don't want the pacing to go slow just for that. We see the opening of the Quidditch World Cup final, but we don't see any gameplay. Some reviewers found that to be awkward or rushed. At least sprinkle some clips of the game into the movie. Same thing with the first task, where you gotta take a golden egg from a dragon. We only see Harry's attempt not just in full, but ever. Again, maybe sprinkle the other champions' clips in there. We don't need to see the whole thing, but at least acknowledge them. Still, it is much darker than the previous three installments. It was the first film in the series to be rated PG-13 in the US and 12A in the UK. When Voldemort gets resurrected after the infamous death of Cedric Diggory, what we get is very much the way Rowling described him to be. Tall, slim, face whiter than bones, and a nose like a snake. The character, played by Ralph Fiennes, mimics the dread that we are meant to get used to for the rest of the series. He really does seem like a cold-hearted killer, and one that shows no mercy. Then there's Mad-Eye Moody, played by Brendan Gleeson, former Auror appointed as a new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. Get used to swapping teachers every year, people. He's probably the most intimidating, but he isn't controlling and biased like Snape is. He's more on the stern side. It is hilarious to see him transfigure Malfoy into a ferret, but his real demonstration of what he can burn into your mind is his lesson on the three unforgivable curses. Imperio, a curse used to mind control as long as the victim is unable to resist. Crucio, used as a form of torture, though not physically. And the worst one is Avada Kedavra, which causes instantaneous death and has only failed to kill one person thus far. Gee, I wonder who that could be. One of my favorite scenes might be the one before the Yule Ball, which not only is pretty funny in a way, but is also a great display of Professor Snape as a no-nonsense character that doesn't have patience for dawdlers. Harry, Ron, and Hermione are talking about who they're going to ask to the dance. During their quiet conversation, Snape non-verbally signals them to focus on their work. He'd lightly smack them with that book he's holding in his hand, or he'd pull on their heads to get them to focus. It's a great scene that not only pushes Ron's jealousy of Hermione for going to the dance with Victor Crumb, the Durmstrang champion, but also gives us more Snape goodness. I've already talked about how Voldemort looks great, especially since he resembles what he looked like in the book, but most of the rest of the effects are actually an improvement over its predecessors. I love the designs of the dragons in the first challenge. It's almost like it's really in the arena. The effects of the gillyweed are interesting to say the least. He is given gills, but I guess the fact that I'm not used to seeing him like this gives a somewhat uncanny feel. The maze is definitely the most stressful challenge for the champions. The hedges are alive and will do everything they can to stop you from reaching the Triwizard Cup. An element in the book that was cut from the movie was this Sphinx that will only allow you to pass if you correctly answer her riddle. That particular element would soon be implemented in the video game of the fourth installment, as well as in LEGO Harry Potter. The film is not perfect, but it's one of the best in the series. The tone that is set by this film would become the norm for future installments. You got 4 whole films left in which Voldemort will be alive, and Harry's got to somehow convince the Minister for Magic to accept this truth. In the meantime, remain on guard because there is much more coming.